Hi, everybody. Here we are for chapters 5 and 6 of the Spiderwick Chronicles on kind of a dreary, rainy, windy sort of day in May. And good opportunity to be able to just sit and listen to a good read. Okay, here we are. It's getting pretty good. We're finding out a lot about the weird and wild creatures that are in this book. And so today we have a few, there's a few more vocabulary than usual, I think. I picked these. Here's the word clattering. The root word of that is clatter, and it just means to make a loud rattling noise. So instead of just saying the truck was loud going down the street, it was the truck made a clattering sound as it rumbled down the street. You get a little bit of a better picture of what the author is trying to say, instead of something like the language is just a little bit more complex, so it makes it a little bit more interesting to listen to and to read. Next one is sinister, and that means to be evil or talking about danger. The next one is oblivious, so not paying attention or unaware is that word, and they come up fairly quickly in our reading today. Okay, here we go. Chapter 5. And so we know when we left last time that Simon has gone missing. And both Jared and his sister Mallory know that the goblins have taken him. And we also know that you cannot see these creatures without that kind of spy glass, that seeing stone that Thimbletack gave to, or pointed Jared in the right direction to find. And so we know that you unless somebody's wearing that, they cannot see the goblins or the fairies or whoever, although they do seem to be able to see Thimbletack without it. Okay, here we go. Chapter 5, in which the fate of the missing cat is discovered. Jared and Mallory approached the goblin camp cautiously, dodging from trunk to trunk. Broken bits of glass and gnawed bones littered the ground. High in the trees, they could see cages woven from thorn bushes, plastic bags, and other refuse. Refuse is another word for garbage. Squashed soda cans hung from the branches, clattering together like sinister wind chimes. Okay, clattering. So clattering, a loud rattling noise, and sinister is evil. So that must be a kind of quite a spooky sound. 10 goblins sat around a fire. The blackened body of something that looked a lot like a cat turned on a stick. Every now and then, one of the goblins would lean over to lick the charred means burnt, would lean over to lick the charred meat, and the goblin turning the spit would bark loudly. Then they would all start barking. Several of the goblins started to sing. Jared shuddered at the words. Fiddle-roll, fiddle-rat, catch a dog, catch a cat, skin it raw, skin the fat, on the spit, turn like that, fiddle-roll, fiddle-rat. Cars whizzed by, oblivious. Remember, they've come just off the highway to find this little group of goblins busy having a barbecue. And oblivious means that people driving by are completely unaware about what's going on. Perhaps even their mother was driving past now, Jared thought. How many? Mallory whispered, hefting a heavy branch. 10, Jared answered. And I don't see Simon. He must be in one of those cages. I'll show you. This is the picture of, so you can see all the little cages hanging from the trees, and then there's little goblin barbecue happening at the bottom of those cages. Every now and then, one of the goblins would lean over to, I already read that part, sorry. I don't see Simon. He must be in one of those cages. Are you sure? Mallory squinted in the direction of the goblins. Give me that thing. No, not now, said Jared. They moved slowly through the trees, looking for a cage large enough to contain Simon. Ahead of them, something cried out, shrill and loud. They crept forward to the edge of the forest. An animal was lying alongside the road, beyond the goblin camp. It was the size of a car, but curled up with a hawk's head and the body of a lion. Its side, was streaked with blood. What do you see? A griffin, said Jared. It's hurt. What's a griffin? It's a kind of a bird, kind of. Never mind. Just stay away from it, Mallory sighed, moving deeper into the woods. There, she said. What about those? Jared looked up. Several of the high cages were larger, and he thought he could make out a human shape in one of them. Simon. I can climb up, Jared said. Mallory nodded. Be fast. Jared wedged his foot in a hollow of the bark, hefting himself up to the first split in the branches. Then, pulling himself higher, he started crawling along the bough that held the little cages. He stood up on that limb, and if he stood up on that limb, he would be looking into the cages that were hung higher. As he edged along, Jared could not help looking down. In the cages below, he could see squirrels, cats, and birds. Some were clawing and biting at the bars, while others were unmoving. A few contained just bones. They were all lined with leaves that looked suspiciously like poison ivy. Hey, dribble puss, over here! The voice surprised Jared so much he almost lost his grip on the branch. It had come from one of the large cages. Who's there? Jared whispered. Hog squeal. Now, how about opening that door? Jared saw the frog face of another goblin, but this one had green cat's eyes. It was wearing clothes, and its teeth weren't glass or metal, but what looked like baby teeth. I don't think so, said Jared. You can rot in there. I'm not letting you out. Don't be a cat whipper, beetlehead. If I holler, those guys are going to make you into dessert. I bet you yell all the time, Jared said. I bet they don't believe anything you say. Hey, look! Jared grabbed the edge of the cage and pulled it forward. Hog squeal went quiet. Below, the goblins slapped one another and snatched pieces of cat meat, apparently unaware of the racket in the tree. Okay, Jared said. Good. Let me out, the goblin demanded. I have to find my brother. Tell me where he is, and then I'll let you out. No way, Candy Butt. You must think I'm as dumb as a hat full of worms. You let me out, or I scream again. Jared, Simon's voice called from one of the cages farther down the branch. I'm over here. Oh, I'm coming, Jared called back, turning toward the sound. You open this door or I scream, the goblin threatened. Jared took a deep breath. You won't scream. If you scream, then they'll catch me. And then no one's going to let you out. I'm getting my brother out first, but I'll be back for you. Jared edged farther down the branch. He was relieved that the goblin stayed silent. Simon was stuffed in a cage much too small for him. His legs were drawn up against his chest, and the toes of one foot stuck through the bars. His bare skin was scraped from the thorns that lined the cage. You okay? Jared asked, taking his pocket knife out and sawing at the knotted vines wrapped around Simon's prison. I'm fine. Simon's voice quavered just a little. Jared wanted to ask if Simon had found Tibbs, but he was afraid of the answer. I'm sorry, he said finally. I should have helped you look for the cat. That's okay, said Simon, squeezing out through the part of the door Jared managed to open. But I have to tell you that turtle head boy, enough mouth. Let me out, the goblin shouted. Come on, said Jared. I said I'd help him. Simon followed his twin back along the branch to Hogsqueel's cage. What's in there? A goblin, I think. A goblin? Simon exclaimed. Are you crazy? I can spit in your eye, Hogsqueel offered. Gross, said Simon. No thanks. It will give you the sight, jiggle brains. Here, Hogsqueel said, taking a handkerchief from one of his pockets and spitting in it. Rub this in your eyes. Bleh. Jared hesitated. Could he trust a goblin? But then, Hogsqueel would be stuck in the cage forever if he did anything bad. Simon would never let the goblin out. He took off the eyepiece and wiped the dirty cloth over his eyes. It made them sting. Ah! That's the most disgusting thing ever, said Simon. Jared blinked and looked over at the goblins sitting around the fire. He could see them without the stone. Simon, it works! Simon looked at the cloth skeptically, but rubbed his own eyes with goblin spit. We had a deal, right? Let me out, Hogsqueel demanded. Tell me what you're in here for first, said Jared. Giving them the handkerchief was nice, but it could still be a trick. You're not a very chicken-beaked for a nimblehead, the goblin grumbled. I'm in here for letting out one of the cats. See, I like cats, and not just 'cause they're tasty, which they are, no mistake, but they got these eyes that are an awful lot like mine, and this one was real little, not much meat there, and she had this sweet little mew. The goblin looked lost in his memory, then abruptly looked back at Jared. So enough about that. Let me out. And what about your teeth? Do you eat babies or what? Jared had not found the goblin story very reassuring. What is this, an interrogation? Hogsqueel groused. No, I'm not letting you out already. Jared came closer and started to cut the I'm letting you out already. Jared came closer and started to cut the complicated knots on the cage. But I want to know about your teeth. Well, kids got this quaint idea of leaving teeth under their pillows. See? You steal kids' teeth? Jared fumbled for a few more moments, saying nothing. He had the last knot almost sawed through when the griffin started screeching. 4 of the goblins circled it with pointed sticks. The animal couldn't seem to raise itself very far off the ground, but it could snap at the goblins if they got too close. Then the creature's hawk beak connected, scissoring off a goblin's arm. The wounded goblin squealed while a second drove his stick into the griffin's back. The remaining goblins cheered. What are they doing? Jared whispered. Well, what does it look like? Hogsquill replied. They're waiting for it to die. They're killing him! Simon yelled. His eyes were wide, staring down at the gruesome spectacle. Jared realized that his brother was seeing all this for the first time. Suddenly, Simon grabbed a handful of leaves and sticks from the tree they were standing on and hurled them at the goblins below. Simon, stop it! Jared said. Leave him alone, you jerks! Simon shouted. Leave him alone! All of the goblins looked up. At that moment, their eyes reflected a ghostly pale light in the dark. Remember? They figured that they can see best in the dark because of their milky white eyes. Chapter 6, in which Jared is forced to make a difficult choice. Let me out! Hogsquill yelled. Jared snapped into motion and cut through the last knot. Hogsquill danced onto the branch, heedless of the goblins barking beneath him. They had begun to surround the tree. Jared looked around for some kind of weapon, but all he had was his little knife. Simon was breaking off more branches, and Hogsquill was running away, jumping from tree to tree like a monkey. He and his brother were abandoned and trapped. If they tried to climb down, the goblins would be upon them. And somewhere down there, in the gloom, Mallory was alone and blind. Her only protection was the red of the sweatshirt she wore. What about the animals in the cages? Simon asked. No time. Hey, mucky pups! Hey, mucky pups! Jared heard Hogsquill shout. He looked in the direction of the voice, but Hogsquill wasn't talking to them at all. He was dancing around the campfire, sticking a large strip of burnt cat meat in his mouth. Ah! Ninny hammers! He yelled at the goblins. Pestle heads! Goober nuts! Jibbernoles! Fiddle wizards! He leaned back and urinated on the fire, making the flames blaze green. The goblins turned from the tree and headed right for Hogsquill. Move, Jared said. Now! Simon climbed down the tree as fast as he could, jumping once he was close enough. He fell to the ground with a soft thud. Jared landed beside him. Mallory hugged them both, but she didn't let go of her stick. I heard the goblins get close, but I couldn't see a thing, she said. Put this on. Jared held out the eyepiece to her. But you need it. Now, Jared said. Surprisingly, Mallory buckled it on without another word. After it was on, she reached into her sweatshirt and gave Simon his shoe. They started moving into the woods, but Jared couldn't help looking back. Hogsquill was surrounded like the griffin had been only moments before. They couldn't leave him like that. Hey, he called. Over here! The goblins turned, and seeing the 3 children started moving toward them. Jared, Mallory, and Simon started to run. Are you crazy? Mallory yelled. He was helping us, Jared yelled back. He couldn't be sure she'd heard him, since she was panting at the same time he was speaking. Where are we going? Simon shouted. The stream, said Jared. He was thinking faster than he'd ever thought in his life. The troll was their only chance. He was sure that it could stop 10 goblins with no problem. What he wasn't sure of was how they would avoid it themselves. We can't go this way, Mallory said. Jared ignored her. If only they could jump the stream. Maybe that would be enough. The goblins wouldn't know there was a monster to avoid. The goblins were still far enough behind. They wouldn't see what was coming. Almost there. Jared could see the stream ahead, but they They weren't to the ruined bridge yet. Then Jared saw something that stopped him cold. The troll was out of the water. It stood at the edge of the bank, eyes and teeth gleaming in the moonlight. Even hunched over, Jared guessed that it was more than 10 feet tall. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Lucky me, it said, reaching out a long arm in their direction. Wait, said Jared. The creature moved toward them, a slow smile showing broken teeth. It definitely was not waiting. Hear that? Jared asked. That's goblins. 10 fat goblins. That's a lot more than 3 skinny kids. The monster hesitated. The guide had said that trolls weren't very smart. Jared hoped that was true. All you have to do is get back in the stream and we'll lead them right to you, I promise. The yellow eyes of the creature glinted greedily. Yes, it said. Hurry, Jared said. They're almost here. It slid toward the water and dropped under with barely a ripple. What was that? Simon asked. Jared was shaking, but he could not let that stop him. Go in the stream there, where it's shallow. We have to get them to chase us through the water. Are you nuts? Mallory demanded. Please, Jared begged. Trust me. Well, we have to do something, said Simon. Okay, let's go. Mallory followed her brothers toward the muddy bank, shaking her head. The goblins burst through the trees. Jared, Mallory, and Simon waded through the shallow water, zigzagging around the pit. The fastest way to go after them would be to cut through the middle of the stream. Jared heard the goblins splashing behind them, barking madly. Then the barks turned to squeals, and Jared looked back to see a few goblins paddling for the shore. The troll grabbed them all, shaking and biting and dragging them down to his watery lair. Jared tried not to look anymore. His stomach did an odd, nauseous flip-flop. Simon looked pale and a little queasy. Let's go home, Mallory said. Jared nodded. We can't, said Simon. What about all those animals? Simon. Chapter 7, in which Simon outdoes himself and finds an extraordinary new pet. Whew. We only have one chapter left here, and then it's on to the next book. Holy doodles. All right, that's the end of chapter 5 and 6, the Spiderwick Chronicles, the Seeing Stone. Book 2. Okay. Take care, everybody. Enjoy the nice, cool weather and staying inside, curled up with hopefully a good book. And we'll see you again soon.